So James Gunn has had one of the most unique Hollywood careers up until this point, proving himself to be an incredibly unique and bold writer that's dipped his toes into different genres of horror and most notably comic book movies. I think it's fair to say that Gunn is probably one of the three most influential and successful comic book filmmakers of all time, maybe only edged out by guys like Christopher Nolan and Zack Snyder. But now as the CEO of DC Studios, he's sort of dedicated himself to continuing to innovate in this genre. With the release of Guardians of the Galaxy 3, I wanted to take a look back and rank all of Gunn's directorial work between TV and film, as well as one film that he wrote but didn't direct that I really want to talk about. I really like every single one of these movies and shows, and Gunn is one of my favorite writers working today, so I'm excited to get right into this. Slight spoiler warning ahead for all of these. This was the feature debut from James Gunn, and although the film doesn't feel like it's cheap or like it was made by an inexperienced director, it's just the one film in his filmography that I feel like it just didn't really bring anything new or unique to its particular genre. This film is essentially an alien invasion story, which sort of becomes like a Resident Evil 4 live-action remake in a way. And although it has its moments, with Michael Rooker giving an amazing performance as Walter White, Grant the alien, and the director of Cocaine Bear also doing her thing, I just never really got hooked into this one, at least not in the way that the other 7 projects hooked me. But overall, for a first feature film, this is definitely a success. It's definitely a solid movie that I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy. The second film from James Gunn, this was his first dive into making a superhero type film, and this is definitely the most unique one that he's made in a way. It's definitely one of the most unique movies that I think I've seen in this genre. Rainn Wilson is absolutely perfect in this film, selling me completely on this character that I'm not sure that anybody else could have really pulled off in this way. Although this film feels similar today to works like Kick-Ass, and maybe the overall plotline doesn't stray far from a predictable path, this film was just super entertaining, and Elliot Page, holy shit, what a performance. Probably the closest thing we'll ever get to seeing a perfect on-screen Ellie from The Last of Us. Respect to Bella Ramsey, I mean, you were great in the HBO show, but fuck me, man. Elliot would have been so perfect in that role back in the day. Overall, I enjoy the hell out of this one. It's definitely a lot of fun.
The times that I've cried, keeping all the things
James Gunn is definitely best known for his Guardians trilogy, as it's not only the film series that put him on the map, but arguably one of the greatest superhero trilogies of all time. Unlike the greatest comic book trilogy ever, the Dark Knight trilogy, the second movie in this trilogy is definitely the weakest, but Guardians 2 is still definitely an incredibly solid movie that I think has one of the greatest emotional gut punches in comic book history. The film takes a while to get going, which is where my problems mostly lay, and there's definitely a lot of fluff in here. Kurt Russell as the villain Ego is definitely fun at times, but mostly I'm just not really sure that he works. There's also an extreme over-reliance on bad CGI for this film, which definitely isn't unique for the MCU in any ways, shape, or form. But besides that, this film is awesome. Chris Pratt gives probably his best performance of his career, and the film does a really good job at developing the relationship between characters like Gamora, Nebula, and their father Thanos, which really benefits Infinity War, which came out a year later. The real winner of this film, though, was Michael Rooker as Yondu, who was amazing, both with his relationship with Rocket early in the film, and eventually in the finale with Star-Lord. The ending is incredibly sad and effective, and overall, this is just a really great comic book movie that I feel like does not get enough love. It's always ranked near the bottom of the MCU.
I hear the train a-coming, it's rolling around.
I don't know why, but this film has become just really forgettable for some reason. It's sort of released in a weird time, right after COVID was just starting to calm down in 2021, and I feel like not many people saw it or even really talked about it. The Suicide Squad is a fucking great movie. It's got its problems that hold it back a little. For example, I think Starro as a villain kind of seemed a little silly. I think at times the comedy doesn't work, specifically a lot of the Harley Quinn stuff in the middle of the film. I also think the film, for the most part, is predictable and felt so contained in the larger DC universe where it felt like a negative in a way that they were trying to avoid some of these other characters. This isn't Gunn's fault, as I'm sure he was limited on which DC characters that he could use at the time, back when he wasn't the CEO of DC. This film is super fun, though, with Gunn writing this new group of characters in a way that gives each a chance to shine, while also being hilarious. John Cena as Peacemaker is perfect, and he proves that he's probably the best WWE actor. Idris Elba is really good as Deadshot, or whatever his character's name was, and Margot Robbie gives a fine performance as Harley Quinn, as she usually does. The whole cast is great, and the film really benefits from its R rating as well, with James Gunn letting loose on both the graphic violence as well as the dialogue, where he could really just kind of write whatever he wants, and these characters can talk like real human beings that aren't avoiding saying bad words. I'm a really big fan of this film. I just feel like the projects ahead of it are just a little bit better. So Gunn didn't direct this film, and I'm kind of cheating here a little bit. The BELKO Experiment was directed by Greg McLean, but it was written by James Gunn. I wanted to include it because I fucking love this film, and nobody talks about it. It dropped back in 2016. It tells a story of this office building where all the employees get locked down within this building and essentially have to play a Hunger Games style battle to the death where only one person can survive. It's a really simple concept that's been done to death, but it works so well here. This film is so much fun, so violent, hilarious, and satisfying. It sets up a really cool world and a mystery, and unfortunately we still haven't gotten to sequel to this one yet, and man, do we need one because it set up a really cool possible second movie. This film just kicks ass though. It's really simple, it's a really unique take on this genre, and it's just a damn good time. I recommend checking it out because I know a lot of people haven't seen it. But yeah, time for the top 3. Gunn's newest movie, Guardians 3, is both the final film in Gunn's trilogy, acting as the end for many of these iconic characters, as well as the end for James Gunn's time in the Marvel Universe as he fully commits to his CEO role at DC. I have to admit, my experience with this film was almost ruined. Halfway through my viewing, the fire alarm went off and my entire theater had to be evacuated. We had to wait about an hour before we got to get back into the theater and continue the movie, so that definitely affected my overall enjoyment. In saying that, my main issue with this film is the length. It's almost 3 hours long, and it just did not need to be. I also feel like it wasn't as definitive of an end for some of these characters as I wished, at least the characters that we know for a fact aren't coming back. Other than that, just like, wow. This is an emotional ride, telling such a strong story that's centered around Rocket for the first time, with Bradley Cooper doing his best voice work of this character yet. I think the villain is a little bit silly, mainly in the second half of the story. He's really good early on, but the second half of the story just becomes this really loud and kind of annoying villain. But honestly, it doesn't even matter. This film is about family and loving yourself, and it's just so warm and so beautiful. It has one of the best opening scenes in any film ever, with the best use of the song Creep by Radiohead. And the closing scene is so damn great as well, it just almost made me cry. And this is just a really good movie. It's just an enjoyable and emotional movie that is going to connect with most people that see it. The MCU might be struggling at the moment, and they really needed a movie like this that would just connect to most audiences and just be tell a good emotional story with some good action, some good laughs. And I really think this one's a hit, and you can tell by the box office it's doing really well. And honestly, congrats to James Gunn. This is a great movie, and honestly, it was an absolute success. If you would have told me 2 years ago, when the series was first announced that an HBO original show starring John Cena playing a superhero who wears a toilet on his head would not only be a massive hit, but arguably the best comic book show to date, I would have laughed in your face. But Gunn was able to pull this off in a way that only he can, with his dark humor and writing style, paired with almost no limitations when it comes to how raw, violent, and rated R it can get on HBO. Gunn crafts a show that is not only fucking hilarious, but surprisingly tells an engaging story with an entertaining cast of characters led by John Cena, who is so good in this show, and builds to a finale that was so amazing and had one of my favorite comic book moments of all time. The show is just so awesome, and it was such a surprise when it came out. I mean, it even has the greatest opening credits ever. It's hard to believe that Gunn wrote this as a fun side project that he never thought would actually get made, which just shows the immense talent that he has and the love he has for these characters and for this genre. He's just super talented, and he's got such a good feel for this genre, and maybe not everybody likes the comedy, maybe they think it's a little bit goofy, but he's so good at writing this particular style of comic book movie or show that it just works so well, especially when he's able to let loose in that R rating. Peacemaker is great. I'm excited for season 2, although I think it might be kind of a long time before we get it. Guardians 1 is Gunn's crown jewel. It's the film that made him a household name in Hollywood, as he took this group of characters that most people back in 2014 had never heard of and made them one of the biggest franchises on planet Earth. This film kicks ass from start to finish, expanding the MCU into space for the first time, opening up the world to concepts like the Infinity Stones, as well as characters like the Collector and Thanos. This film at the time felt huge, and it really nailed the comedy in a way that I feel like every MCU film since has tried to replicate with iffy results. Like, this film is genuinely funny. The action is great, and Ronan the Accuser is a great villain. I think sequences like the prison escape are great. The finale with the Nova Corps was awesome, and the dance battle to save the universe, matched with the Guardians taking control of the Power Stone, are just such epic moments. The music in this film is legendary, and it's kind of become a staple in Gunn's films. He has great use of music in all of these movies. There are just very few negatives in this film, and it's not only one of the best MCU films, not only James Gunn's best movie, but it's probably a top 5 comic book movie ever made. So that's it. Do you like Gunn's films? If so, leave your rankings down below. Are you excited for Gunn's next film, Superman Legacy? I'm very intrigued to see what James Gunn is able to do with the character of Superman. But yeah, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and I will see y'all in the next one.